Hello, friends. Back once again to deliver the UFC Fight Night picks. I know I'm coming in at the last minute, but without further ado, we're about to hop straight into it. I don't really have too many pre-fight, pre-card thoughts on this one. I think that most of the odds are pretty correct. The favorites are who they should be. There are some interesting matchups because some matchups fell out, or one in particular that fell out at the last minute, and we'll get to it very shortly. I'm actually feeling pretty confident in most of the picks on these cards, but there are actually two fights that are extremely hard to predict. One being the main event of Tatsuro Tada versus Brendan Royval, but the other one we'll get to it when we get to it. Starting off, flyweight men's bout, Clayton Carpenter versus Lucas Rocha. This is a spooky one, actually. I went back and forth on this one. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Clayton Carpenter here by decision, if not like a submission, maybe in the later rounds. Lucas Rocha has a lot of experience. I think if you just read these two dudes on paper, you compare them on paper, the biggest thing that'll pop out to you, even more than the height of Lucas Rocha, is his resume, at least, his record of 17 wins and 1 loss as a professional. Both of these guys are making their UFC debut. However, there's definitely a difference in quality of competition faced between these two fighters, and that can be seen easily by looking at Lucas's resume. Even in Lucas Rocha's Dana White Contender Series fight versus, I forget the dude's first name, but Bittencourt, he was losing that fight. Now, Lucas Rocha was not getting like his ass beat, but he was losing that fight. Bittencourt was putting hands on him, kind of starting to have his way, getting takedowns, putting a lot of pressure on. In the second round, he lands a fucking perfect knee, basically, to put Bittencourt out. Follows up with some shots as well. And that is one of Lucas's strengths, actually. I think he has really, maybe not really good, but decent timing. He has decent timing, and with 18 professional fights, he has experience. You know, it's even though these dudes might not be the best, he does have experience. I think that's actually valuable to have that fight time, to be in fights. Clayton Carpenter, despite only being 7-0, which is impressive in its own right, is still very green. He really hasn't fought anyone too crazy. He did beat Edgar Chairez on Dana White Contender Series by decision. I do think Clayton Carpenter, however, is the more skilled fighter here. And this is coming from more of Clayton Carpenter's background. Clayton Carpenter was started out in multiple combat sports very early. I haven't verified this myself, but I've heard rumors, seen people saying that Clayton Carpenter was also taking multiple like unsanctioned amateur bouts when he was a minor, which that's good for us if we're going to pick the dude, and we are going to pick the dude here, Clayton Carpenter, to get this one done. I just think he is a better fighter, even though he might not be as experienced as Lucas Rocha. I think Lucas Rocha hasn't been fighting the best guys. He has been finishing them, though, which is important. That's the little caveat to that. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Lucas Rocha is able to knock out Clayton Carpenter or TKO him, especially early on in like a really super fast sequence, like a 1 or 2 shot finishing sequence. But I think if Clayton Carpenter can control Lucas Rocha, or at least get his back the same way that Bittencourt did before he got knocked out, he'll probably get a sub or be able to work Lucas Rocha a lot more. Moving on, Dan Argueta versus Cody Haddon, another one that I was a little torn on. Not as much as the first one, but I am pretty torn because Dan Argueta, despite, this dude is a little deceptive on paper, in my opinion. Despite losing his last one to Jean Matsumoto, he put up a great fight in a scary dude. John Matsumoto had a tiny bit of hype coming in. People thought that John Matsumoto was low-key going to steamroll Dan Argueta, and Dan Argueta was actually able to fight back and do his own work and made John Matsumoto work for that. John Matsumoto did very well, but Cody Haddon here, I think, is a bit of a different beast. I think Cody Haddon is going to be a lot more composed and precise. Cody Haddon, again, one of these dudes that might be a little bit more on the greener side with only 8 professional fights, 7-1, making his UFC debut. He has faced really good guys, actually, like including, I believe, Steve Erceg. He faced Steve Erceg early on. It is what it is. It's tough when you run into a dude like that. But Cody Haddon is going to be the pick here just because of, one, a lot younger, a lot more of the prospect. Cody Haddon is an actual prospect that the UFC is trying to get in, another Australian prospect. Moving on to what was originally Chris Barnett, or it wasn't originally Chris Barnett versus Junior Tafa, I think, but That's what I had written down before. Now it is Sharaf. I'm not sure you pronounce his last name because it's actually kind of hard to find footage on this dude, but Sharaf versus Junior Tafa. I'm going with Junior Tafa. There are actually a lot of people who are fading Tafa here and picking Sharaf. And don't get me wrong, the dude's 4-0, which is extremely fucking green, and he's only beaten dudes with losing records, I'm pretty sure, or neutral records, at least. He's also beating them like all in the first round, or for he doesn't have a lot of fight time. Junior Tafa as an MMA fighter doesn't have a lot of fight time, but he's been a kickboxer. He's had fights in the UFC at least against tougher dudes. And when I say tougher, I'm not talking like necessarily like the toughest dudes in the world. Like Mo Usman's nothing crazy, but he has faced also a somewhat diverse blend of skill sets. He's gotten some good experience, Junior Tafa, is what I'm trying to say here. I can't back in a completely straight up fucking untested last minute replacement dude in Sharaf against a dude like Junior Tafa, where this is probably going to be a striking battle. It's probably going to be a kickboxing match. I'm going to go with Junior Tafa to get this one done. I think they want Junior Tafa to get this one done as well. I will low-key be rooting for Sharaf. And if I'm saying his last name wrong, now I sound like absolutely crazy. I'll be rooting for Sean. It would be a pleasure to see Justin Tafa actually get KO'd by this dude, Sean. That would be nutty. But it probably won't happen. It'll probably be the other way around, in fact. Junior Tafa, even though some people will say he's probably one of the worst fighters in the UFC right now, like just objectively, not even like straight up record-wise, just skill set combined with record, combined with all his performances, the eye tests. There may be some truth to that. But with the addition of Sharaf, is he really now? That's what I'm trying to get at here. I'm going Junior Tafa. I don't think that one's too crazy either. Moving on to a fight that I'm actually pretty excited for. Niko Price versus Themba Gorimbo. I'm going with Themba Gorimbo here, actually, to get this one done by spectacular finish, low-key. Might not be a spectacular finish, but I think Themba should get Niko Price. Niko Price, as sad as it may be, and I'm not trying to count dudes out completely and say they're fucking tossed to the side. They're yesterday's news, but Niko Price is definitely a lot closer to the end of his career than he is to the start of his career, if you get what I'm saying. Maybe even the middle of his career. Niko Price still a dangerous dude. He still has skills. He's decently well-rounded. He might give Themba some trouble, especially if he goes to the ground and Themba ends up in a spooky spot. I think that Themba is just going to have everything going for him. Another thing that I'm worried about with Themba is, and this is pretty much just conjecture, but if Themba somehow is kind of relaxing a little bit too much, which I hope he's not. I'm not even accusing the man of doing that. Everyone knows The Rock gave him a house. He's gotten some performance bonuses. He's doing a lot better for himself now. He's doing well for himself. Please, please keep it going, brother. Keep that hunger. We need a real dangerous, focused Themba Gorimbo for this fight because Niko Price, I think, is one of those dudes that if you're just slacking, sleeping, it's going to bite you in the ass, essentially. The dude still has the skills to do that. Themba Gorimbo is the pick there. Moving on to what is the other, one of the two, I think, hardest fights to pick on the card, actually. Jonathan Pearce versus Pat Sabatini. I've gone back and forth on this one multiple times. I'm even thinking about going back on it again. I'm leaning with Jonathan Pearce. I think Jonathan Pearce is going to be the pick here, and here's why. Pat Sabatini, I think he's the better grappler. Overall, the better grappler. I don't think Jonathan Pearce is too far behind, especially in the wrestling department. I do think that Jonathan Pearce, however, is maybe a little bit, has the edge in striking a little bit. Pat Sabatini can strike, actually. It was a quick fight, but even against Diego Lopez, he actually cracked Diego Lopez one good time and was trying to get his own combinations, and just Diego Lopez is fucking relentless and he's very powerful, so it's kind of spooky to overcome that. Pat Sabatini could win this actually in multiple ways, in one way that people really don't think so, which is he kind of outstrikes fucking Jonathan Pearce at first and then takes him down and subs him, or it goes to a decision. He might also just be able to get Jonathan Pearce down and win out a decision that way, essentially. I think Jonathan Pearce is going to be able to keep this fight pretty much on the feet. Oh, God, I want to say I'm going with my gut and going with Jonathan Pearce, but now My gut is dead saying Pat Sabatini. It's kind of crazy. I'm going to still go with Jonathan Pearce, man. I've switched enough on this one. This isn't... Oh, God. Pat Sabatini has more reliably used his skill set to win fights than fucking Jonathan Pearce has, though. That's kind of the terrifying thing. Pat Sabatini is also a bit chinny. Jonathan Pearce is not like a fucking iron chin, but he is pretty tough. God, man. We're gonna go with Jonathan Pearce. There might be something in the comments. I might switch and write it in the comments, but if you don't see anything in the comments saying, hey, I'm backing Pat Sabatini, I'm still with Jonathan Pearce, because that shit is spooky hours. This is definitely spooky hours. This is low-key spooky hours here. Or it was, rather, with Jonathan Pearce versus Pat Sabatini, but Jonathan Pearce is the pick. Moving on to CJ Vergara versus Ramazan Temirov. Again, another kind of spooky one where CJ Vergara could surprise a lot of people and pull out a win over a dude who actually seems to be pretty talented, still young, and very physically gifted, but is a wild man in Ramazan Temirov. A bit of a wild man. Not 100% wild, but a bit of a wild man. Unfortunately, just the way that CJ Vergara fights, he's susceptible to not even like, I don't think it's, this might just sound like straight up crazy talk here, but CJ Vergara, I think, can be drawn into these chaotic exchanges where Ramazan Temirov can maybe brutally fucking hurt him, unfortunately. I think that CJ Vergara will be able to match the pace of Ramazan Temirov if Ramazan Temirov tries to go crazy. In that sense, I don't doubt CJ Vergara's conditioning in that realm, but I see CJ getting clipped. I see CJ getting caught by something. Maybe not typically the typical sense that we think of when we say overwhelmed, but something like that. Something very much like that. But hey, maybe CJ is able to actually not only hold on, but edge out every single round against Ramazan in a close decision. I really don't know. It's spooky hours here. It is very much spooky hours here. We move on. Oh, I almost said CJ Vergara is the pick. Maybe that's the subconscious gut fucking pick I should revert to. But I'm going to stick with Ramazan Temirov. Moving on. Corey McKenna versus Julia Pilastri. I'm going with Corey McKenna here. I think Corey McKenna is actually just a little bit more well-rounded than Julia Pilastri, even though there's a bit of a notable reach discrepancy between these two fighters. Julia Pilastri really didn't show us anything for the hype that she had coming into her fight against I want to say Josephine Knutson. I'm not going to look it up right now, but she was able to survive the onslaughts, I remember, in that fight. Like, she didn't get, like, really violated in that sense, but it was really nothing special. It was a bad performance from Julia Pilastri, and I think Corey McKenna actually has some sneaky techniques that might catch some people, someone like a Julia Pilastri who maybe feels comfortable in certain areas of her game off guard. That one's kind of simple. Moving on to one that I think, from what I've read, I'm actually fading multiple people on, which is Daniel Rodriguez versus Alex Morono. I'm going with Alex Morono here to take this one by decision calmly. Daniel Rodriguez could also just literally outpoint Alex Morono and also win by decision, and probably by sneaking in a few heavier shots here and there. I think that Alex Morono isn't completely fucking done, though. I think he's the younger dude still. Even though he had a bad outing versus Niko Price, I'm gonna have faith in that was a bad outing. I think Alex Morono is still a very skilled fighter, a very precise striker. And I think that D-Rod's gonna have problems with that. I think if D-Rod gets clipped on the chin a couple times, it's gonna really fuck him up. So Alex Morono the pick there by decision, but don't be too surprised if you see in like a pressured sequence where Alex Morono with ones and twos literally starts getting it done, like on some spooky shit. Moving on, Josh Fremd versus Abdul Razak Al Hassan. I'm going with Abdul. Josh Fremd is a bit of a weird dude. Is a bit of one of those weird fighters where we've seen him look not bad at all, and we've also seen him look pretty fucking dog shit, and it's kind of hard to still gauge exactly where he is between those two. His record would indicate it's the latter rather than the former, or closer to the latter rather than the former, but Abdul, man, is only getting older. His last fight ended in, you could say, controversy, but I'm hoping that we're going to kind of see the same thing, except without any fouls, without any no contest DQ, none of that. I think Abdul will be able to land on Josh Fremd, ideally in the first round, and just put him out. If this fight gets out of the first round and gets like maybe even past the second, and Abdul's gassed, I'll be screaming and I'll feel like a fucking idiot. But I do think that Abdul is going to KO Josh Fremd. I'm actually somewhat confident on that in round number 1. And we move on to another fight that actually I think is a bit closer than people would expect and could go really either way. Chidi Njokuani versus Jared Gooden. God, I haven't switched crazily on this one. I've only switched like twice really on this. From Chidi Njokuani to Jared Gooden and then back to Chidi Njokuani, where I'm at now. The thing that scares me, though, is Jared Gooden does have more ways to win than Chidi Njokuani. That's kind of the worst fucking thing about this fight. Chidi has looked good at times, like actually very good at times with the hands, but again, one of those fighters where he's also looked pretty fucking piss poor as well. Did win. He got the win over Reese McKee, which people thought he was going to lose, actually, I'm pretty sure. Then again, Reese McKee was never anything crazy. I think I still am going to go with Chidi Njokuani. I think, if anything, ideally he hurts Jared Gooden and fucking puts him away, right? But hopefully can keep the fight on the feet, stay the distance, and fucking just outpoint him, really. I'm expecting that. Moving on, Chidi Njokuani, the calm pick there. You know, it's funny. At the beginning of this video, I was like, I'm pretty confident on these this week, but now that I read them out, I don't know. I don't know. Moving on, man. To the co-main event. Grant Dawson versus Rafa Garcia. I'm going with Grant Dawson here. Grant Dawson is the logical pick. Probably most people's locks on this card. Grant Dawson can never, ever, ever, ever be fucking called a lock after the Bobby Green performance. That's unfortunately going to be a shadow that looms over Grant Dawson's entire fucking career unless he becomes a champion, like in dominant fashion. Because really, it will always make you think that Grant Dawson has a sus chin. I think Grant Dawson has a sus chin, and because of that, by definition, every fighter has a puncher's chance against him. Rafa Garcia is a tough dude who is skilled. He's an experienced dude. I wasn't really too familiar with Rafa Garcia. I had more so just forgotten about him a little bit. But Rafa Garcia is a skilled dude. I don't think he will be able to stop Grant Dawson from smothering him, essentially. But maybe he does. That's the thing. It's a fight we got to see. We really got to see. 4-3 in the UFC. Rafa Garcia has fought okay dudes, He's tried it a couple times. Grant, on the other hand, has fought a little mix of everything. But the big one that still haunts him, like I said, is the fucking Bobby Green shit. Still giving me PTSD from that shit. But Grant Dawson will be the pick. As long as he doesn't... If Grant Dawson loses this fight by any fucking means... Maybe that's a little too harsh. I was going to say, we can never really even watch his fights again. But... if Grant Dawson gets washed, we'll revisit this topic. So I don't know how, but I actually forgot to include the Brad Tavares versus Jun Park fight in the picks and predictions. So we'll do it now, a little quick one. This is going to be slid in. I don't even know why I'm giving so much of an intro as if this is another video, but... Jun Park versus Brad Tavares, the Ninja Turtle versus Brad Tavares. Now, I'm going with the Ninja Turtle, the Iron Turtle. Okay, I said the Ninja Turtle. The Iron Turtle here. However... this is probably one of the most unfavorable... not only is it one of the most unfavorable matchups that Jun Park has ever faced, it's also the highest level of competition that he's also probably faced as well. Granted, Brad Tavares, again, like I said, closer to the end of his career than the middle of it or the beginning of it, but still a very dangerous dude that can rack up some explosive power, land shots, and keep dudes from taking him down, which, unfortunately, is how the Iron Turtle mainly wins his fight, is by setting a pace, dictating the fight entirely. Through small means, but they they add up, you know, by being able to land his shots, land his jabs, push people up against the cage, clinch up if it gets a little spooky, or if he feel like he can body them and bully them in the clinch a little bit. Brad Tavares, this might not work out on him, but I think that Jun hopefully has the pop, has the power to at least get some respect from Brad Tavares, so Brad Tavares doesn't try to dictate the pace and will be able to get this one done to a decision. Doesn't even have to get Tavares down, actually. Just has to keep him against the cage, keep him at range, calm jabs, calm 1-2s, elbows if it gets into the clinch. Iron Turtle's actually pretty decent in the clinch, but again, fucking horrible stylistic matchup because everything that Park likes to do, Tavares also likes to do, and at one point did it better. So we'll have to see, man. Moving on to the main event, Brandon Royval versus Tatsuro Taira. I grasp at words that would accurately articulate how much I want to fucking pick Brandon Royval, because I can see Brandon Royval throwing that knee up the middle and catching Tatsuro Taira. I can see it fucking happening. I can see it happening, man. Oh, I can really fucking see that happening, but I think I'm just going to go with Tatsuro Taira, because Brandon Royval, this fight is a lot closer than I think people maybe think, but Tatsuro Taira has shown us that he is kind of him. Some people have been saying, like, oh, I really wasn't too impressed. Nah, he's been impressive. He has put people away in impressive fashion. Brandon Royval, though, has actually impressively held his own against champions and very high-ranked dudes who are known for grappling, or at least being extremely fucking high-level grapplers. And I keep thinking about the fights versus fucking Pantoja and Moreno. Like, stuff like that makes me legitimately think that Brandon Royval could straight up catch Tatsuro Taira, because I think that he has an advantage on the feet. When it's just pure striking, I think Brandon Royval would outstrike Tatsuro Taira. When everything's involved, though, that's when it gets spooky, right? That is when it gets spooky. Tatsuro Taira could land a fucking monstrous little overhand that hurts Brandon. He could just use the threat of that to get him down and hold him down, or maybe even work for a sub after that, because Tatsuro Taira is brutal in that sense. He will go for subs. Brandon Royval is very good at staying alive, though, man. He's good at getting dudes off of him, keeping them where they are, at least, until he can get to a more advantageous position. It's really fucking rough. Brandon Royval, probably one of the best underdog picks that you could have on this card, I think, actually. But I want to pick Brandon Royval so bad, man, and fucking get this. But I think I stick with Tatsuro Taira, because I've been having visions. Like, I straight up have visions of fucking Brandon Royval knocking out Tatsuro Taira with the knee. With straight up the knee up the middle. Maybe on the takedown attempt, maybe just at any time. Like, it's just like, God. Now that just might be me being crazy, because I'm fucking crazy. But that might be the combat gods actually, like, literally giving me the vision. Sending me the vision. Feeling very prophetic in the hood. Oh, God, it's spooky hours, man. Do I fucking just take a giant chance and go with Brandon Royval? That's the thing. I feel like it's taking a big chance, though. That's what holds me back. I really think that Brandon Royval has a really good shot at beating Tatsuro Taira. Like, this is an equal test. I think it's actually kind of rare that the UFC will throw out the equal test. Not rare, but uncommon that the UFC will throw out straight up an equal test. Both guys are really testing themselves in a similar manner of intensity, of difficulty against each other. And this is one of those times, I think. fuck, bro? Again, you might have to check in the comments below, because I might switch to fucking Brandon Royval. But for now, man, I'm just going to hold it at Tetsuro Taira. I'm just going to be sitting in silence because I'm having a mental battle, going to war in my mind. The voices battling each other out, battling it out. I think we're in for a good night of fights, though. I think actually many of these fights might end up going to decision, but they have a real good chance, a lot of these fights, of ending in finish for either one. That's what makes it spooky, too. You know, I was saying, I think the favorites are pretty understandable and correct, but with the specific matchups, with the fighters involved, a finish could come from the other side. From most of these matchups. From straight up most of these matchups. We'll just have to see. I'm very excited. I will see all of you for the Smoky Hours live stream. We are going to try to get that shit early. Started a little late last time because multiple technical difficulties. Some that I didn't even fucking fix until you guys were so kind to hop in and let me know. Specific shout out to Benjamin Dover, aka Johnny Depp, as always. But that's it. I'll see you then. Expect more content very, very soon. Gonna keep the outro short. Thanks for watching. Smash that fucking like button. Fucking two-handed smash that dislike button if you dislike the video. But let me know why you dislike the video. Leave your thoughts, anything you want to say in the comments below. I'll get back to it. I always love reading any kind of comment, even if it is criticism. I really don't mind. As always, thanks for watching. Much love. Big kiss.